Welcome back to another lecture. This is Module 2, Computer Operating Systems, where I discuss malicious tools and methods. And in this specific lecture, what I want to do is I want to dig a little deeper into the concepts that I was speaking about in the last lecture, which are threats to computers and users. This is something that's super important, and I don't want to gloss over it. I want to take my time, but at the same time, I know these micro lectures are fast. If you haven't hit that like or subscribe button, please do so. It really helps. It lets me know if this is still relevant information or if I need to go ahead and refresh the content. Okay, so let's get started. What I did was I went into Bing and I typed in malware tools, and you can do the same thing in Google if you would like, or if AltaVista is still alive, dating myself, but I would say that typing in malware tools gives you a bunch of things. But what does that actually mean? What are these things and why are they important? What are we trying to protect against? Well, let's talk about this for a second. There are a couple of things that we ourselves are trying to protect against. There are things that we ourselves want to ensure that we don't bring into our PC and compromise our data. Now, that data in the form of PII is very important because our personally identifiable information, social security number, birth date, our first and last name, our address, our political affiliation, where we work, the address of our work, our employee ID, those are all personally identifiable information. And any combination of those pieces of information can allow me to find out more about you, almost to pinpoint you specifically. It's very hard nowadays to stay away from these specific outliers because of cookies that a lot of websites use to find out what you want to purchase and what you want to look at. But what's a cookie? Well, a cookie is a item within your browser. It is a tool within your browser that is used to store key pieces of information that you yourself have told the browser you would like to store, unbeknownst to yourself. So I typed in malware in this Bing browser. If Bing had cookies installed, or if Bing had cookies on the back end, which it probably does, then my search will be saved as a cookie. Now, Bing can do things with that cookie. They can save that data and then parse that data out to other vendors who want to pay for it so they understand how to market to me and make me spend money on their things. Cookies in and of themselves were not made to be malicious, and they're very powerful, but the problem with cookies is that they're plain text and they're just daggone insecure. So let's talk about what malware actually is. I like to use articles that I find on the internet from big box tech firms like Microsoft, Apple, Google, and whatnot. I also like to use from scholarly journalistic articles like Forbes and even institutions of higher learning. In this case, we're going to use Microsoft's MSDN to get a better idea of, well, what is malware? Like, what does that even mean? Well, malware is basically the concept of tricking the end user into believing that they are doing, gaining, buying, attaining, or interacting with a specific thing, computer-based object, website, app, whatever. But the intent and the motive of that app is not what the user thought it was. What do I mean by that? Well, let's use a tried and true example. You decide as a person that you want to buy this specific item for Christmas. You really liked what you want, what it was. You saw it on the internet. YouTube did a couple of advertisements, and you were like, hey, I really like this thing. I want to buy it. So you went onto a Google like I did, or Bing, and you type in the item's name. And the first thing that pops up, you click on it. Well, that might not necessarily be the thing you thought it was. It might be another website that is posing, as the site that sells that, and then bait you into something else. We call that clickbait. All right. Clickbait is the idea that I am baiting and switching you to something else, or I'm making you click on something based on a subset of ideas that may or may not be true. And this is true with a lot of things. You can look down at the bottom of here of this specific website, and it goes into great detail about what malware is and what the types of malware are. Things like phishing, we talked about in the last lecture. Spyware, where I'm looking at what you're doing and I'm gaining information based on what is your motive or usability. What do you do in your sites or on your website, on your PC and things like that. Adware is the idea that I'm going to install myself onto your PC to give you ads against your will, or even to just give you things that would slow your PC down dramatically until you adhere to what I want. And there's a couple of other things in here that you probably haven't heard of, like rootkits or supply chain attacks or tech support scams. Now, you might not know this, but a lot of those phone calls, those robocallers that you get, those are scams. Those are scams that are designed to make you give up information in a way that allows that specific scammer, that specific malware provider, so that they can actually identify you or identify as you in the event that they want to impersonate you. For instance, let's say you decided you wanted to call your bank because you got an email. All right, you got an email that says that your balance is overdue, so you wanted to call your bank to rectify the balance. Well, the email has a number in there, and it doesn't necessarily, you don't remember that being the right number, but you called it anyway because you were up in arms. So you called and they said, hey, I need your social security number before I can open up your bank account. Well, that's a red flag right there, because normally your bank will not ask you for information like that up front. They might ask you for your PIN, so they can unlock your account. They'll ask you for a phone PIN or things like that. But there's something a little worse than this, than them asking you for your information. They might ask you for your information and you could say no and then go on a long diatribe about why they're wrong for harassing you. But that is the wrong thing to do. And the reason why it's the wrong thing to do is because a lot of banks are moving towards voice tokenized passwords, meaning your voice has a specific signature that is unique to you. And if those scammers can record your voice, they can then record your voice saying other things that they would like it to say, almost like a voiceover. And they can use that voiceover to get into your accounts. Now, this is very dangerous. And I always, like when I'm with my mother and she's answering phone numbers, she doesn't know, I immediately take the phone out of her hand and I hang it up. And she always looks at me wild. I'm like, I told you, you can't talk to these scammers because they're recording your voice. And they can use that to impersonate who you are. If we keep scrolling down, there's other things in here that I think you've seen before. Trojans, which are viruses and or malware that's encapsulated in another application that might be benign. You might think you're installing a couponer for, to get coupons for things, only to find out that that coupon application had malware installed in it to do other things on your PC. Viruses are another way of malware, and so on and so forth. Unwanted software, worms, ransomware, macroware. I think the big answer here is understanding that at the end of the day, these things are inevitable to run into, but you can bypass and defeat it. But there's one piece of malware that isn't here. And it's a piece of malware that's one of the most powerful pieces of malware that I've ever seen. And that piece of malware is called social engineering. What's social engineering? Social engineering is the use of deceit and trickery to persuade someone to hand over money or other valuables. Now, that can be within any scope whatsoever, but normally social engineering is done either by phone, by text, by email, or on social media. It's especially powerful on social media because of the peer pressure involved with utilizing that specific platform. Well, that's all I have for today. I don't want to keep going because this starts to get really, really scary with invasion of privacy and exposure to inappropriate and distasteful content. But I would tell you that despite all of this, there are specific protections in place that'll ensure that you don't find yourself in the position where you're feeling somewhat, trapped. Either way, this is the last, this is what the last thing I want to say. Like I said in the beginning, please like and subscribe. It helps tremendously. And as I say in all my videos, good luck, have fun, ciao.